start admitting some people in. Hi, everyone. As we are starting to let people in, I have a question for you to kick this off. What does MCP mean? And I want the worst answers only. What do you think MCP means? And I only want the worst answers possible. If you give the correct answer, you're getting kicked out.
People are definitely thinking, how rude can I be if it's worst answers only?
So what does MCP mean? Worst answers only. Okay, this is great. We've
Most
got,
common pain in the arse I like.
yeah, most common pain in the arse, mince chocolate pancakes. Yep, make crap, please. Okay, okay. Yep, Ravi. Looking for some more here. What does MCP mean? Your worst answer only. As we're letting some more people come in to the chat. Okay. I'll continue to highlight the best ones that we get there. So, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody. My name's Dave Wilkins. I'm founder of SDR Leaders of EMEA. Really great that you're all here today to talk about something that's really current in our space. And I'm going to be introducing our guests in a moment. Before that, I see quite a few people here that are going to be coming, but we have our first ever conference for SDR leaders happening in London on the 14th and 15th of October, Funnel EMEA. It's going to be 200 of the very best of EMEA SDRs all coming together from all parts of Europe, Middle East, and Africa, where we're going to talk about not only how to do the role, but also the future states and about how we can start framing what sales development is going to look like, all with our unique EMEA voice as well. So if you're interested in coming, we are 75 days away, I think, on the last time I checked. FunnelEMEA.com, check it out, get your tickets there. End of the plug. Now for the main event. So today we're going to have James and Adam here from Stacky, who are all going to be talking about MCPs and also about how to look about this when you're starting to build out your motion in this space. So before we let them start talking, the next question I have for you is, in the chat, what tools have you tried to connect with Claude? So just put them in. What tools have you been trying to connect with Claude? And with that, James, Adam, I'll turn it over to you.
Cheers, Dave. Hi, everybody. I guess this might be like our 7th or 8th roundtable we've done with this community now on different sales tech things. Obviously, over the last 6-7 months, Claude has got stronger and stronger and stronger and become more and more of a I guess the main part of a lot of people's sales stacks, or that's where people are trying to get it to. And there's pressure coming from above. Maybe a lot of you get pressure from sort of your C-level when your directors suggesting that, what are you doing with AI? What about Claude? What about Claude? What about Claude? And so today, Adam and I are going to go through kind of some key concepts which we have found really help the teams we work with understand how they can start using it and get the most out of it rather than letting it, I guess, run away, hallucinate, or just giving people another sort of like chatbot type function and get some of the real power out of it. Adam, do you want to introduce yourself? First one for you, joining us on this and presenting.
Absolutely. Thanks, James. Yeah, glad to be here with everyone. It's my first sort of roundtable webinar that I'll be presenting alongside Stacky. So excited to be here. James and I go a long way back. We've known each other for slightly over a decade now. I started in my first role when James was already in the business for about a year or so. And then following us working together as SDRs, I moved on to a couple other roles also as an SDR before transitioning into account executive roles in the data science, data analytics space. And then about a year or so ago now, I made the jump back across the Stacky, where I'm doing some consultancy work, some fractional AE delivery, but then a big part of my work now is around the Claude piece and leveraging AI within sales stacks and sales organizations.
Mark, I think that was you. If you could go on mute, please. Right. I'm gonna, I guess, share a screen. There's a few key concepts we're going to cover with you, and then 3 like actual use cases that we are doing within our own business and within other SDR teams that we help and help them build their Claude environments or sales stacks. And do you want to pull that up and we'll get started? So if you go to the next slide, where we are, the key concepts to have in mind, and this is where Adam's technical knowledge is far greater than mine. So jump in as much as you can. But there's 3 concepts, and one of the things we'll keep referring to through this, and we'll show you, is the idea of like a master file. We often call it a vault or call it the brain, and we use a tool called Obsidian. But think of this as, and you can build this with Claude, but it needs somewhere to save all of the documentation that you're going to give it, so which provides the future context, the future reference, the persona definitions, the scoring definitions, all that type of stuff. This will all become clearer as we start to show you things, but bear that in mind, the idea of a master file that Claude can reference back to. Then you have your MCPs, which is the other tools which you are going to connect to Claude, where it's going to, based on what you ask it, or maybe your SDRs ask Claude, it's got all that context in the master file, so it knows what it's looking for, it knows the context, and it can then go to the other tools that have the MCPs and execute tasks and get them the right information, the right lists, the right data sets, right messages, and that type of stuff. Then there's this orchestra analogy, which Adam said to me earlier, so I'm going to make you say it to the group now. You're on mute.
Classic. So I came up with this analogy when I was speaking with James earlier, but effectively the way I envision the usage of Claude, if you think about it from an orchestra point of view, all of the tools that you'd be using, like a Gmail, an Apollo, that would be the orchestra. Then the usage of Claude itself, that is the conductor's baton or the wand, as it were. But then you are the conductor ultimately. You're the one that's going to make the orchestra play and play to your pace and to your tune. And by building steps 1 and 2, that's how we get that orchestra working in unison rather than playing their own tunes in silos.
Hopefully that analogy was as good as I thought it was when I first heard it this morning. Dave's sort of nodding his head there. Any thumbs up in the chat would be really reassuring. But let's go on to them. So the 3 areas we're going to start looking at and show you guys are building better data or prospects in list building, better timing, and better messaging. They get slightly more complex as we go through, which is why we've kind of done it in this order. So the way you're going to start getting better data or better lists, better prospects out of your Claude environments is you're going to have to build that account and ICP definition somewhere so it can be leveraged by Claude. And this is that master file kind of stuff. So you might put in your size of teams, hiring signals, maybe community memberships, and all the other industry vertical size of teams, all that type of information into there. Adam, do you want to take it from there and show how we've done that and what that actually means?
Yeah, absolutely. So as James mentioned, the kind of the building block here, or the first or foundational step, is having a single place where the important and relevant information about your company lives. And that can be across the board, very, very simple information about like where you're based and such, what you sell. But then as we get sort of more in depth is where you look to include case studies, the types of personas that you sell to, the type of language those personas use, the type of roles that they inhibit. I'll show you an example of this within here. So James mentioned we use Obsidian. One of the starting points or the most important sort of documents that we built was this ICP master document. And what it is very simply, it's an overview and explanation of all the different types of relationships that Stacky have and the types of those customers and how those relationships are defined to us, how they are, what they are to us, what they want to us, and what we offer to them. Then we've also got some sort of hard set criteria like firmographic criteria. All of this information will eventually be used to populate and to sort of service and surface leads for us ultimately. And so this is very high level, just kind of showcasing the different ICPs that we have, the firmographics behind them, the technographic qualifiers that show them of being a good style of customer for us. Again, here we talk about the scoring. So actually, how do we rank some of these signals and this sort of the behavior from ICPs? The logic of pulling those leads in from the solutions that we use to identify leads, one of them being Trigify, how we sort of tier the signals in terms of quality and make sure that we are focusing on those tier one hots the most. And also, very importantly, who we deprioritize. This just helps Claude to make sure that it doesn't feed us with random noise that it may think could be relevant, because we've been very clear about describing exactly who it is that we want to go after and exactly who it is that we want to leave behind within there as well. And then just to show you in a little bit more depth, an actual example of one of the customer types. This is the kind of information that we would typically have within there. And we have this for all of the different customer types. And as we get more customer types in the future, we would look to build one of these for them as well. And the important thing is that we basically capture all of that sort of relevant information under a single roof, so that when Claude eventually does look to build a message for us to reach out to direct customers, it doesn't need to pass the internet. It doesn't need to pass the entire document. It knows to look just for this file as that relevant piece for direct customers. I'll pause there.
Yeah, point was all of this stuff starts to bleed into the next steps quite quickly. So if we jump around a little bit, we're going to do our best to stick on it. But Adam's almost going into the messaging side there. But that is what we call like kind of creating that master file or vault. We use a tool called Obsidian, but really that's just like a file or a folder that Claude builds all of those. You build all those definitions. You can tell Claude what the definitions are, and then it will help you build that in Obsidian. Keys to your question there, and I tried to answer it whilst Adam was talking, but like if you don't feel like you're maybe technical enough as the SDR leader to maybe build some of this stuff, all of that, if you can get all of that type of documentation on ICP, target markets, messaging, you can get all of that documentation, give it to a RevOps person or a go-to-market engineer, and then they can build that like master file or that master folder for you in Claude. And then as we go through the next few steps, your role as the SDR leader is then to also say, I want to use these tools because these are the best data, or I want to use these tools because I know they give us the right triggers. I want to use these tools because they there are outreach tools. And it needs to, and what I want to happen is we always draw it on a diagram for our customers. And then someone technical can then connect the MCPs and they just then work out the workflows. And once all of this is done, once we got to the end of this slide, or once we got to the end of this deck, you can then give it to your SDRs and they can actually log into Claude and they can say, hey, I need another 100 accounts in this, but in these verticals, or I need the last 100 accounts that have interacted with this piece of content, or I want the 20 accounts that we've not engaged with, or I want lookalikes accounts to this. And because you've done this hard piece that Adam's just shown you, or you've asked your RevOps team to do it, they will get the right answers. Rather than you give it to them before you've built this, they just get the generic sort of back and forth with, as people can get with any LLM. Hopefully that answers your question, Keys. So then once Adam's has built all of that for us, we then connect for ourselves. We connect Apollo, we connect Surf, because they're pretty big databases, some waterfall enrichment, so we get good contact information back and good accounts back. Bowtie, we've played around with that previously, so we know it works. Anyone who saw the demo day, that's SalesBot, they're now Bowtie. And then their stack we've played around with as well, because it's very good for giving you hiring signals and technographics. Adam, are you able to show some of those outputs, or were we going to do that later?
Yeah, I can show one of those outputs. Let's have a quick look. So what we've done, in addition to having the tools set up via MCP that James just showed, so Apollo, Surf, Trigify is a tool we use for signal monitoring and sort of social listening. We've also
Right.
connected our Slack MCP to Claude as well. And what that means is we can basically push messages directly into our Slack instance. So it's just very easy for any one of us to quickly sort of inspect and review messages. In this instance, I've created a lead channel that identifies high signal leads. And again, the way we get to those signals is by building out the documentation that I've just showed you in Obsidian. But by identifying what those signals would be, we've been able to point, in this case, Trigify, at several sort of
Pause
searches.
there.
Yeah,
Let's go on to the next slide before we go into the Trigify stuff.
yeah, okay.
Actually, I think I probably misled that. Right, let's go to the next slide. So that's better data. That's going to help with that. And then as we were nearly slipping into there, better timing. So this is tools like Trigify. Teamfluence does it for LinkedIn. Phantom Buster, similar to Trigify, does it across all socials. Or you can look at like HubSpot's own buyer intent. It's what we use. So that tells us who's visiting our website, who is engaging or connecting to us on LinkedIn. It monitors for keywords in like other people's posts. So we monitor like people like Dave, people like any number of sales influencers and like sales partners that we have. We can also scan Reddit, Substacks, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn and stuff like that for certain keywords and posts. That feeds into, so the reason this starts on the left, you need to think about where you're going to pick up all those signals. They feed into your Claude environment, or Claude keeps reading what they surface. And then was what you've done on what we went through on that previous slide, it then scores all of the engagement and all of the people that might engage with those against that master file and says, yeah, this is a good lead, and then it can enrich it or pull it from Apollo. Adam, do you want to just go through that bit?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So
Right away.
quickly just jump into Trigify just so I can show you what that would look like. So within Trigify, we have a bunch of searches that we have saved. As James mentioned, a lot of these people are maybe partners of ours or people that we know have a good audience. The initial thinking was to try and find people from specific tools and then look at the people engaging with those posts and then sort of use them as leads. What we found, and I think you guys might find this as well, people that are in a buying stage, let's say, for example, for a dialer, they're not typically posting on LinkedIn saying, hey, I need a dialer or my dialer is really bad. Instead, they're more likely to be engaging with people who are posting about improvements to dialers or discussion about dialers being a challenge, etc. So then what we decided to do was focus on influencers who create posts that generate discussion. And once you've got that discourse and that discussion, then it's very easy for us to use the skills that we've taught our Obsidian instance to identify who would be a good lead from the people that engage with the post. So let's say, for example, we take this post from Liam. It's going to look at the 56 people that's liked it and the 7 people that's commented on those posts. Then what we would get from there is any number of leads from this post once they pass that signal tier. So in this instance, this person has liked Richard Smith's pain post. We know it's a pain post because we've categorized that post. We know they're a head of enterprise sales. They're a senior sales leader engaging with a specific sort of area of topic. We know what the type of contact was, and we know what type of customer they are. We even get given a hook that could be very simply shared with this person. We saw you like this post, happy to share what we're seeing, so on. What we've done in addition to here as well, within the Slack environment, is create an emoji-based reaction system. It's as simple as James goes into the channel on a daily basis. He sees a new lead. He gives a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If he gives a thumbs up, that person automatically gets pushed into a blank LinkedIn connection campaign from James. So all he has to do is within the Slack, like that person, they get pushed straight to a connection campaign. If you wanted to actually say something to them specifically, he could reply to that Slack message with whatever message he wants, or he could just paste that hook in, for example, and then they'll get pushed to a campaign where they get sent that message directly. So that's just a very quick way to sort of personalize, customize, or just push someone through within a sequence. Then
That's important. clarification there as well. Like, so whilst we've chosen for our own company to have that push to Slack, and like you saw that hook, it automates that message. We don't do that. We reply in that prompts us. We can reply in the thread, and it will send the message I've actually written myself before anyone comes at us for like mass AI personalization or anything. But customers do ask, can we build that, or can they have that done for them? That type of, this is the message, and just have that sent. You can also have that. Well, this again, probably starting to come on to the next bit. But the important thing to flag on, I wanted to flag on this slide as well, is just some of those results. Obviously, the title of this is creating a lean sales team. We see this for ourselves. It's probably like anywhere between 20 and 50 because we have quite a few ICP buckets. So it's about 20 to 50 leads per week that get surfaced in that Slack channel. Obviously, it will depend quite a lot depending on your ICPs and your size of market, your message, products, who you're selling to, and stuff like that. Like cybersecurity won't necessarily be posting; they need a virtual firewall and stuff like that. But on average, we do see that it can easily get you 10 to 20 leads per week for your reps. Again, caveat on sizes, but we typically see that. And because it's good timing, they've scored against your ICP stuff. I mean, you can do the math yourselves, but if you're going to give 10 to 20 leads per week to your SDRs on top of their usual work, well, that's where we start to see teams like doubling some of their top performers. It can as good as double some of their performance. Bottom performers and sort of mid-tier. Bottom performers, I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference to. I think it will uncover more foundational skills in that they can't make best use of those, or they can't tell if you're going to automate a message for them. They can't tell if it's a good one or a bad one. Whilst your top performer will say, "Yeah, don't send that. Send this instead." So that's some like clarity and caveat there for anyone wondering like how does this actually impact SDR? How does it actually help my team perform? Cool.
James,
and then go on, Dave.
Sorry, before you continue, there's a question that's coming from Denisa. I saw that you also have Clay in your tech stack. Did you try building these signals in Clay at any stage?
We have not ourselves, although Adam is working with a customer who is building those skills in Clay. Adam, I'm talking about Ed and his team. So I know, like, do you want to shed some light on that?
Yeah, I mean, Clay's an incredible tool. I think what I've found is that a lot of Clay's capabilities now have been commoditized by other tools. And if you wanted just a single house to do everything and it's all to be simple, Clay's probably a good option. But we found Clay to be quite cost prohibitive for the actual outcome of what it gives. And maybe you could find a way to use Clay in a very sort of limited capacity and use other tools elsewhere. But I found that, initially the directive that I had from James a few months back was to learn as much about Clay and Claude as possible. I found that with a little bit of patience, you can probably do a lot that can be done within Clay yourself within Claude and without having to pay that prohibitive cost. So if cost isn't an issue, Clay's a really, really good solution. But if you're looking at sort of keeping the cost low where possible, then yeah, you can probably avoid investing in it.
Yeah, I think I would also just add to that, thinking about that one customer, Adam. So correct me if I'm wrong because you spent more time with them on this specifically. It depends where you want your SDRs to sit and work. If you want to like remove them from, you don't want them using Claude and logging into other things. You want them just like focused in their CRM, which is what I have pretty much built Stacky on for the first 2.5 years. Then they build certain skills. They build like basically a tick box in their HubSpot, which they can just select, and it will run the skill in Clay to enrich and update that whole list, and then they can push it into Nooks and just crack on with that list for the rest of the week. So they don't have to go keep sourcing their own contacts. But they could just as easily say, like, build all, and this is why we're working with them, building this and connecting the MCPs to Claude, so that when the SDRs do want to do that independent accounts research, when they do want to do their own, they want to have their own autonomy, go and find some other lists, go and find other contacts, that type of stuff. They're not having to log into 3 or 4 tools. They can go to Claude, and because we've done this work and they've got the MCPs to plug into that, they can say to Claude, I'm looking for this, or I want to try this, I want to do a campaign that does this. And then it goes to those other tools and pulls that for them. So that's how I think about it, if that helps. Cool. Then the final and third sort of piece is like better messaging. I'm going to caveat this now that I'm not talking about mass carpet bombing, loads of emails or AI messages, although some people are fine doing that. But the way we think about this is the first 2 parts we've shown you need to feed into Claude to make this actually work. I'll let Adam explain on the sort of the synthesis and the insights and where it gets that to build our voices. But you need all those parts, and it can feed into Claude. And then you can have Claude, and this is where Adam was sharing the outcome we get, because we have it come up in Slack. We can then push that to an outbound sequence. We use Getsales for that. I can reply, it will send my message to people, or I can just like it and it will send connection requests. We have other customers who use all of this to draft cold call openers, and then that goes into a specific object in their HubSpot, so their team can call with a specific opener for that prospect. Obviously, you can't do this for every single prospect in your TAM, but you can do it for the ones that are maybe raising their hands, being captured in some of the signals and stuff like that. So the final piece here, Adam, do you want to go into sort of building the voice and tone of voice?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, you guys, if you've ever asked AI to write you something, to build you a script or something like that, I'm sure all of you would have appreciated that it doesn't really kind of sound very human, and it can be pretty obviously when you see an article on LinkedIn or whatever, you can pretty much tell when ChatGPT or something like that has had a big hand in writing it. And so that was a concern for me, because I know we wanted to do a lot more content, and we wanted to effectively enrich the brain, the Obsidian Vault, with as much real information as possible, but do so in as natural way as possible. And Stacky have a call recording tool, as many people do. We use Fathom for that specifically. And then James also has the luxury of having many YouTube interviews with, I guess, part of the podcast series where he kind of speaks with a number of different people. And in both of those formats, there's a lot of really valuable information that's being shared, either from us about advice about technologies to use or ways to structure teams or processes to put in place. And what I was able to build with Claude is a skill that passes every one of our calls. It uses the Vault to identify, firstly, which type of conversation are we having? So is it a direct customer, consultant, vendor, agency? Once it's understood the context of that conversation, it then looks to understand, is this an internal call, just Stacky agents, or is this an external call? If it's an external call, it will obfuscate any sort of private and sort of secure information that's referenced across the course of the call, but it will capture the context of what's being discussed. So let's say if James recommends 2 or 3 tools, the Claude skill will understand the context within which he recommended that, based on the team size or the number of calls they want, or the fact they want a power dialer and so on. And it will give us an output at the end of it in a Slack channel with a full overview of not just the call notes themselves, but the actions that have been taken. If it's a customer or a prospect style opportunity, it will apply. I'm a big fan of Medic and Medpick sales framework. So it will apply the Medpick sales framework to that call, and it will tell us how many of the letters we've achieved and how many we need. It will suggest the follow-up email off the back of that. It will suggest some changes to HubSpot and the deal record type, just to make sure that the admin piece is kept up to date. But then what it also does is it builds a quote unquote voice guide, so that when I ask it to draft me an email or to draft a note or to build the draft of a blog post that I will then review, it does so more in line with my voice and how I would describe things than just a blank sort of large language model finding information and putting something across that kind of looks like it reads well. And that's been a really, really big component of what we're doing internally, because it's feeding so many different components. It feeds our content engine, it feeds my email follow-ups, it feeds our proposal engines, and it can also then help to feed new content ideas as well. So I'll pause there. As you can probably see, I can speak about these things for quite a long time, but I guess to leave you with it, my ultimate thing that I was trying to do with the better messaging, when I was prospecting directly into customers, the longest part for me was researching a company's current state. Are there industry trends going on? Has there been a leadership change? And so on and so on. And then trying to get that message across to the prospect I'm speaking to. If I'm speaking to someone in finance, that could be a different message entirely to someone in operations, to someone in supply chain. And what this skill should do is allow you to put your best foot forward with each of the personas that you are able to sell to, with the right information, the relevant information. So you're not just spending loads of time finding information, you're at least able to relay that and get a yes or no from your prospects.
And like to that point, this you can have it based on my Fathom calls, my calls using our dial adjust call, and I've got the added benefit of all of like our YouTube and blogs versus Adam's calls or Adam's, which is exactly what I was about to show. So it has James's tone and it has Adam's tone, and you could do this for all of your SDRs, but you'll see Adam proved this point brilliantly earlier when he used the word obfuscate. I would never use a word like that, but Adam will. So he's like, somewhere in here it says, there you go, wordsmith, voice texture, deliberately drop, blah, blah, blah. So like, it will sound like him. And over time, the more you feed it, the better it will get. Like I said, we're not using automated messaging and stuff like that, but we always have that human block. But who knows where like AI is going to go in another 6 months? It might be at a point where no one can tell the difference and stuff like that. Who knows? I don't think it will ever get to there. But if you start to build these things now, you can start to like really help the volume of output, some of the quality. I would still only give all of these skills to like top performers because they know the difference between good and bad. And I would maybe use it as training wheels for maybe lower performers, new teams, but just make sure there's always maybe a human checking what's being actually sent. I think that's everything on there. Guys, we are doing more and more of this, but for like anyone in this community and for pretty much all our users, like we give free tech advice. We are not trying to build another G2. We're trying to build a much better version where people can ask for free advice. So do come and ask us any more questions. Visit the site, and we're going to have some very exciting logins and user abilities in there soon as well. Dave, back to you, mate.
Thanks. And what does I can't even say the word, so I can't even say the joke. Thanks ever so much, James and Adam. We'll just open it up for a few moments. If there's any questions that anybody has, come off mute. Well, I'm sure Adam and James will be happy to answer them. There's no silly questions. I can see some people looking that they want to say something. Vicky, I can see the Vicky staring at you. I can see that you want to say something. Yeah, what does obfuscate mean?
Is that for me or for the group?
Oh, it's for James, but it's okay.
I don't know.
Okay, we'll end it there then. Thanks ever so much. I can see people getting onto the YouTube channel, subscribing. We'll get this episode out, and you can check out our 100, I think now, videos that we have up online. James, Adam, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Stop recording.